How do you, though, Shawn, as a church pastor, like, I know the Bible inside out.
Yeah.
We've learned to move with the Holy Spirit. We're getting well trained up in the prophetic and in healing. But what do you do when someone comes to your church and says, I feel a real call into politics, or I feel a real call into the creative arts? I don't know. That's not my expertise. That's not something I know much about. How do you help those people?
I think pastors in the old days, like when somebody came to you and said, my husband's beating me and my kids are on drugs, we felt responsible to take over the whole issue with them, and that's not pastoring.
Right.
That needs a counselor. It needs somebody who can help them through the whole issue.
Right.
And when somebody comes in a good way and says, I'm called to politics, I'm not qualified to release that calling to them.
Sure.
I can encourage them with a spirit of encouragement. I'm called to help steward their growth with them and make sure they're on a deliberate growth journey in God.
Yeah.
And that includes politics. And so for us, when somebody comes in, we start looking for a place to plug them into where they can get not just interested, but they can start their journey. Right. And they might be 50 and wanting to start a journey which is completely qualifiable for politics. You can be 50 and it's a great age to start a political career because you've already had life experience. You don't have to be in it forever. And you could be a city council person, or you could be, we have a friend who just became the mayor of Fresno, California. She's a wonderful woman.
Wow.
She became the mayor. Her husband's a pastor. They just planted a church, and she became a mayor at the same time. And she's never run for politics this way before. I think she was on PTA school council or something, you know. But I think the deal is, like, we're called, this generation of the church is called to be more like life coaches.
Yeah.
And I think it's no small thing that Joel Osteen's church is the biggest church in the world, or in America right now, and one of the bigger ones in the world, one of the top 20 in the world. And he took over the old, the huge stadium where they used to play football, and it's full. Every church meeting, every major church meeting, it's full, like every Sunday morning. And he wrote that book, Your Best Life Now. And when it came out, because I'm second generation Christian, I was like, this is so cheesy, this is so hokey. And I read it and I'm like, oh. And then I read it again because the Lord spoke to me one morning and said, Shawn, Joel Osteen's more of a pastor than most pastors in ministry right now.
Right.
And that offended my heart.
Wow.
And so I thought, okay, I'm going to look at the book again. I read it and I realized he's not building a church centered around him as like kind of a dynasty or a hierarchy. Yeah. He's actually saying, I want you to live your best life and go into society and live the best version of who you are, the eternal you, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so I was reading the book and going, he really cares for people, not to just build his thing, which he has the biggest thing of anyone in America, but he's totally invested into people's lives to try that they would become better. And most pastors have done the opposite. It's like, you get good so you can support the church. Yeah. And he's saying, I don't care if you ever give us money. It's part of tithing, is part of the kingdom, but I don't care if you ever feel like that's part of your life. I mean, just go out there and become you, become the best version. So when I heard that from the Lord, I realized people who come in, whether they're worshipers for our music team or whether they're someone who's going to go do worship in the secular arena, my job isn't to police, monitor, create a pressure that makes them become something, conform to something. My job is to release them to be justified by their individual faith and go on the journey.
Wow.
And what I saw in most churches is that you go into the church and you don't smoke and you don't drink and you don't do these things because there's a pressure on the culture. So as long as you're in that culture of church, you're holy. But as soon as you leave that church and transfer to a new one, you may go through an in-between period of like going, all my old patterns are coming back, because you never overcame them.
Right.
You just learned how to manage them in the midst of a structure. So our job is to go into those people's lives and help them to overcome by just loving them, providing an atmosphere of freedom, a culture of honor, a place of... And so we have musicians that aren't very far on their journey yet, that are secular musicians who still might smoke pot before their show. Well, my job isn't to get them to stop smoking pot. My job is to get them so in love with Jesus that all these character things, pot is not the character issue. Pot is the external root, or the external tree of the root system that's bad. So my job is to say, I love you so much. How can we help you become you? Right. When you become you, you don't want pot. You don't want premarital sex. You don't want all these things. Yeah. And so most of the church is going the other way around and saying, let's cut off this and this and this, all these behavior systems. Right. But they don't even deal with the root system of character and life. Right. And so our job, like in our church, has been not to control behavior. Our job is to come in and love so that the root system is cleaned up and changed People ask us, how are you doing this? And I can't give them a definitive answer because it's relational, so it's different with each person. But we've started like a mentoring program and a life coaching program that we're going to expand. We're probably going to become certified life coaches in our city.
Wow.
And just start doing it for the city also. And so people can go through like an 8 to 16 week course in life coaching. Alongside of that, we have like sexual identity brokenness healing groups, and we have counseling, and we have Theophostic, we have Sozo Inner Healing. Those are all inner healing ministries. So that as people are making big choices, they can go through the healing that it takes to substantiate those big yeses. Because if you say, I'm going to quit alcohol, you need something, you need a tool.
Sure.
Because it's only like 99% of the time, the person needs a tool. 1% of the time, they're instantaneous delivered because it comes from a wrong system inside.
Yeah.
And that proves that God can deliver alcoholism, but if he doesn't go to what's causing alcoholism, then is it a true deliverance?
Right.
Because it'll come out in some other behavior. So we're believing that we're called the whole person, and that we're not called to monitor police, train up. I'm not called to make that politician a politician, but I'm there to love him in a relationship with whatever choices he makes, and say, I still love you, even though sometimes you make me look bad because you said you did something stupid. Like we had Ted Haggard fall, recently a couple years ago, and his church completely rejected him. Yeah. And they sent him away. And I know the church, it's a good church, good people are in that church, but they were under an old mindset of Christianity that said, ooh, you're awful, you're if you sin, you're disqualified. And Jesus not only didn't disqualify Judas for all the things he was doing with bad character, but he let him be in charge of the money, the very problem he struggled with.
Sure.
And so Jesus' mentality of raising people up relationally, he was believing that they were the best version of themselves and treating them that way before they were qualified, before they could be occupied in it. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. And you have to put up boundaries, and it does become unsafe in certain environments because you're saying, I'm going to let you manage your freedom. And that is scary.
Sure.
Pastors love to manage other people's freedom.
Sure.
The church loves to manage our freedom. But if you say, you can manage your freedom, and it is going to affect us, and it's going to be hard, that creates a pressure of the fear of the Lord. Sure. And the fear of the Lord doesn't look like I'm afraid of failing. The fear of the Lord looks like I love my relationship with my wife so much, not married by the way. I love my relationship with my wife so much that if a woman comes in front of me who would tempt that marriage, I'm not going to betray her love because she's too good.
Right.
And when we have the fear of the Lord in our relationship with him, we love him so much that when something comes in that will hinder our relationship with the Lord or our community, we'll say, oh, that hurts. I don't want to do that. It causes too much pain. Yeah. But you have to give people, you have to empower them to love first before they'll make fear of the Lord decisions. Yeah. And they have to fall so deeply in love with God that they'll say, I'll choose you over anything, God. And most people are saying, I believe I can, but I don't know how to. And they have to be in a place where they can experiment with that for a while. So our people look really broken and undone and messy. And Bob Jones gave me a word recently, and he said,
"Sounds
Shawn,
the same."
The people in your church," he goes, "you're up to poop in your up to your knees." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "The people in your church are pooping everywhere." And I went, "That's the grossest vision I've ever heard." And he goes, "No, it's really good because it means you have big babies, and big babies produce big messes, and God will show you how to clean it up each time."
Brilliant.
And that's huge because most churches are clean and whitewashed. Yeah. And you can tell our mess. When you come in, you can see it's a mess, but it's a God-controlled mess. Yeah. We're not afraid of our mess.
I must say our house at home since Silas came has been changed. Yeah. It is a mess.
It's not the same.
It used to be very tidy, but we are so delighted